Welcome to Reuters Events Pharma 2025 here in Barcelona, where I am delighted to be joined by Bill Coyle, who is the Global Head of Biopharma at ZS. Welcome.
Thank you.
The world is changing, but we've been hearing a lot about the pharma business model, that it's going to change. Where have we got to now with it?
Yeah, I think at the core, the pharma business model remains one of high investment, long-term thinking to really bring innovations to market. I think when people talk about the changing business model, they think more about how pharma engages with its customers, primarily healthcare practitioners, but also, of course, patients or healthcare consumers and payers as well. So I think that is where we're seeing a lot of change. We're seeing a lot of change in how we engage, what we engage about, the technologies we're using to assist engagement, whether that's AI assistance for reps to help them be more effective, making more sense of the unstructured data we have about our customers so that our discussions with them are more context relevant, how we create content to engage. So I think a lot of those core pieces of the model are changing. However, I don't know that the model is changing in how we make money in terms of how drugs are paid for. There's some forays into thinking about, of course, population level pricing and those types of things when you get into very large therapeutic categories. But of course, we've not quite made the progress on changing the true business model in how money is made, but lots of aspects of the model and how we engage are definitely changing.
There's been a lot of innovation with science, with fantastic advances and in technology, but it doesn't always translate into access for patients getting those medicines through. What are the barriers still?
So I think two categories of issues. One is related to the traditional issues we faced around high-cost therapeutics and the ability of markets to embrace that given their healthcare pressures in terms of budgets and the like. So I think that remains, and there's still work to be done there on how we demonstrate value of products innovations, how healthcare systems then sunset other areas of spend to make room. So I think that's a traditional area, a barrier. With some of the newer modalities that are coming to market, radioligand therapies, cell therapies, gene therapies, there I think we also have some infrastructure issues in the health system. You might need different things in your hospital or clinic to be able to administer those products. The actual product flow chain is a bit different, the ability to administer, to use those products, et cetera. And now you're talking about perhaps having to have care in a more centralized, sort of tier one, if you will, institution, which then creates issues, of course, for patient access, proximity, ability to get there, expense, et cetera. So hopefully those are able to transform in a way that's more broadly deployable across communities, but we're years from that, of course.
Of course, one exception has been the GLP-1s treating obesity.
Yeah.
The market predictions are enormous. Do you see those being fulfilled, or where do you see this industry going?
I think it's important to note that the weight loss and obesity industry was a very large industry before GLP-1s in terms of consumer spend on all kinds of elements of ways to lose weight, many of which aren't as effective as they could be, some of which can be very effective. And of course, there's an element of behavior change that goes into it as well. So I'm very optimistic about the market, not just from the size that it will become, but also the impact it should have on health. Because you can also see, as you mentioned GLP-1s, the GIP-GLP-1 category, you see lots of other impacts that these drugs are having on cardiovascular health. And they're not always directly related to weight loss. Cardiovascular health, cardiovascular risk reduction, potentially chronic kidney disease, signals around Alzheimer's, dementia, MASH. And so there's all these really amazing health impacts that these drugs can have. Now, as we look at how that market's going to evolve, one of the challenges is, of course, tolerability, side effects, and staying on these products for the long term to maintain weight loss. Because, of course, just like any diet, if folks withdraw the drug, many, not all, may rebound in terms of their body weight. And so I think that's where we'll see a lot of innovation. I think we'll see drugs coming in that perhaps have a better side effect profile. Perhaps we'll see different dosing schedules that allow a patient to taper down over time to maintain, but not lose. There's also elements around the quality of the weight loss. Sometimes you're losing both fat and muscle mass, so how do we optimize weight loss? Are there other drugs or combinations that help us do that? What are the digital therapeutics we put in place for when a patient wants to move off of drug, but maintain their new healthy lifestyle and weight? How do we create the behavior change to maintain weight loss without drug? So I think there's a huge amount of innovation that's going to happen. I really feel we're just at the front end of this, despite the impact it's already having for patients through Lilly, through Novo. But there's a lot more coming, and it's a very exciting industry. So I don't know if 170 billion or 200 billion, whatever the predictions are, is exactly right. but I think it will be a very large market. But the competition will also drive prices down and drive access up because there's a huge amount of assets in development.
And touching on patients, in your keynote speech, you mentioned about the report, the ZS Future of Health report, identifying really how poor patient agreement or enjoyment of their services is. What they're finding is the satisfaction isn't there. You gave some strong statistics. So what needs to be done in order to improve that patient satisfaction score?
Great question. And the way we phrase the question for healthcare consumers is, how do you feel after your most recent healthcare experience or experience with the system? And we ask questions like cared for, empowered, supported, different types of emotional questions. And it is, as you described, a lack of satisfaction there. I think one part of it is how the world's changing around us as consumers. Everything's convenient. We could have a meal dropped off to us here in 30 minutes from an outside vendor, I'm sure, if we wanted to. Everything around us is becoming convenient, and healthcare, not really. And so I think part of it is the compare and contrast to every other service we consume in our lives as consumers versus the healthcare system, which still feels very brick and mortar, very process oriented, lots of forms, lots of things to do to get that 10, 15-minute interaction with the healthcare professional. So I think that's where the dissatisfaction stems from. Solutions, I think, are around how we take some of the burden off of healthcare providers for a lot of that administrative activity that they do. And that's where I think some of the AI and generative AI tools are coming, where you see tools that help physicians with their notes, help them summarize their notes. Those types of things are saving 25% of the physician's admin time, scheduling and rescheduling patients. A lot of the day-to-day process flow of healthcare, I think, can be reimagined. And I think that will create more time in the day for the healthcare practitioner to sit across from the consumer patient and help them. And so that's what I think where the solutions will come.
And you touched on AI in your keynote speech. You
Yeah.
mentioned that perhaps what needs to change is not just the tech, but the human.
Exactly.
Should we be worried about this?
I think one of the things that you'll hear said, and our CEO Pratap says it often, that AI won't replace doctors, but doctors with AI will replace doctors without AI. I think you can see it in students coming through our school systems now. I'm sure people that are entering college now, the doctors will have in 6, 7, 8 years. I think they'll be very accustomed to leveraging those kinds of technological tools in their everyday to take better decisions. And so I think you have to change the person's perspective. We have to change the business processes that we create so they're taking into account where can technology and AI just do a lot of that for us, where we then come in to either oversee it, take a final decision, make sense of some options or choices. And so I think that's where we'll see the humans have to change. We have to change the way we work. I don't think we'll be cyborgs, which I know you're scared of. I don't think we'll quite see that, but I think the way we develop business processes, the way we wrangle data, the way we make sense of information, and also I think the way we pair unstructured information with structured data, which has been the real gap historically. I think it's just a huge opportunity for us, but we do have to change.
And also changing regulatory ecosystem. In America, there are new regulations coming out. How is all this going to impact global pharma, do you think?
So I think if we look internal to global pharma, things like document authoring in clinical trials, CMC protocols for manufacturing, a lot of that document generation can be accelerated, and I think still has to comply with the end regulator as well. So I think there's just cost savings to be had there. On the front end in drug development as well, making sense of all the data we have to find new discoverable targets and all of those things, I think in the medium term, that should just accelerate. It's not as if we're going to go to full in silico next year in terms of trials or full synthetic control arms, but that's probably on the horizon as well. That's probably not that far out. And so I think regulators will have to adapt to some of those further out, but a lot of the core things happening today, I think, is sort of independent of the regulation. Now, when we get to customer facing, whether it's a chatbot that's helping a healthcare consumer or a patient, or a clinical decision support tool that's recommending something to a physician, that's where I think we need to think really carefully about risk and benefit. I think it was highlighted on stage by another speaker today. Humans aren't perfect. Physicians make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But how do we make best use of the technology and use frameworks to manage risk, ethical risk, those types of things? And I think it's an area where the regulators don't have the answers either quite yet. We're actually working in the US with a group called the Healthcare Leadership Council, of which we're a member. It's a lobbying organization comprised of various sectors of healthcare, payers, providers, pharmaceutical, medtech, et cetera. And one of the things that group and team are helping advance is how do we think about AI in health to avoid those risks, biases, downside impacts that we don't want to have, while also bringing savings to the healthcare system and really improving the lives of consumers as well as hopefully healthcare practitioners. And so I think there's a lot of work being done on the ethical applications of AI. That's really important.
Really fascinating insights. Thank you so much, Bill Coyle of ZS. It's been great having you with us. Thank you.
Thank you.